Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. They say reality is all an illusion, and I wonder how they escape the delusion. They tell me reality is built by perception, and I wonder how they escape the deception. Is it built by perception or not? If it is, then how do they know that? If it's all an illusion, and it really is all an illusion, then they are part of the illusion and they also do not know it. So, can we just dispense with these people right there? Or shall we make fun of them first? This gentleman named Anil Seth has done a TED Talk, and my attention has been called to it. It is called Your Brain Hallucinates Your Conscious Reality. We're going to let him have his say, and then we're going to point out where he is dreadfully mistaken, or mistaken in a very simple and primary way. Let us go forward and let him have his say about what we are, really, metaphysically.
Now imagine being a brain. You're locked inside a bony skull trying to figure what's out there in the world. There's no light inside the skull, there's no sound either. All you've got to go on are streams of electrical impulses which are only indirectly related to things in the world, whatever they may be.
That sounds a lot like Immanuel Kant, doesn't it? You've got your brain trapped inside there and it's getting electrical impulses from your eyes, from your ears, from your nose, from your tongue. But it's trapped inside of a black box in there. There's no light in there, there's no sound, there's just streams of electrical impulses coming in. Well, is that true that you are your brain trapped inside your skull? Or are you a human being with eyes and ears? Is it true that there's no light inside your brain? Or could we say when the light strikes your eyeballs, your brain takes account of the light, and therefore your light has a facsimile of the brain inside of it? Your brain has a facsimile of light inside of it, or some estimation of what light does. Couldn't we say that? Couldn't we at least go that far? No, your brain is trapped inside a black box and has nothing but electrical signals coming in. But remember, you are not your brain. Your brain's just part of you. You are your eyeballs and your nose, and your brain is just part of that picture. So it's dropping the context of what a human being is and defining a human being in a different way for whatever purposes he wants. But that's what he's doing. He's dropping the context of what a human being is. A human is not a brain. And if you had just a brain, you would have nothing. You would have nothing. You would have Helen Keller before they could communicate with her through her hands.
So perception, figuring out what's there, has to be a process of informed guesswork in which the brain combines these sensory signals with its prior expectations or beliefs about the way the world is.
So it has prior expectations or beliefs? It doesn't. It builds the expectations and beliefs as it goes. Helen Keller had no prior expectations or beliefs about the world. She had to build it through experience and learning. There are no prior expectations or beliefs, but he's saying here that it's guesswork, that the brain doesn't have a direct link to reality, it just has link to the perceptions. And so it just has to figure out reality through guesswork. We're going to see how utterly stupid and wrong that is in just a second when he gives us the example of different colored squares actually being the same color and it's an optical illusion. It is not guesswork. Our brain tells us about reality. It is not guesswork. It then might be difficult for us to figure out exactly what the brain is saying or what reality actually is, but we do have a direct link to reality. He's wrong that we're cut off through our senses. He's wrong. Let me give you one example. He would undoubtedly stick a ruler or a pencil into a glass of water, and then when you see it go into the surface of the water, it bends. And he says, "How strange is this? The pencil doesn't bend." Now, he didn't do that, but he might do it later in the video. We'll see. I haven't watched all the way to the end. He's the type of person who would. And he would pull the pencil back out and say, "But it didn't bend." So, our eyes are tricking us. No, no, no. Your eyes are giving you utterly correct information about the speed of light in water. That's what you're being told by your eyeballs. Utterly, utterly correct. Your eyeballs are not giving you any fuzzy approximation of the world, And your brain doesn't have to do any guesswork about it. Your brain has thousands of millions of experiences behind it that interpret what you're seeing. There's no guesswork. There's thousands and millions of experiences. Real experiences of the real world, of actual things you saw and touched. So there's no guesswork. It's not a series of the brain is confused and locked inside of the skull and has to guess about fuzzy things coming in that it doesn't quite know whether they're real or not, and then it puts them back in and sees if it can make sense of that. That's not true. What you do is you see reality directly. Now, what you have to do is make sense of what you see. Not try to make sense of the world in spite of the fact that you can't see or sense anything. Your senses do not cut you off from the world. They link you to the world. He wants your senses to cut you off from the world. He wants your brain to be stuck inside your head, and the only thing that it has coming into it is the unreliable lies of the senses. The unreliable lies of the senses. That's not true. The senses don't lie to you, like the glass of water and the speed of light and stuff. Let's go forward and see what else he has to say, and let's see how else the senses do not lie to you.
Form its best guess of what caused those signals. The brain doesn't hear sound or see light. What we perceive is its best guess of what's out there in the world. Let me give you a couple of examples of all this. Now, you might have seen this illusion before, but I'd like you to think about it in a new way. If you look at those two patches, A and B, they should look to you to be very different shades of grey, right? But they are, in fact, exactly the same shade. And I can illustrate this if I put up a second version of the image here and join the two patches with a grey-coloured bar. And you can see...
Well, what are we learning here? What's he trying to tell us, first of all? And then if he could turn his brain on and forget Immanuel Kant for a minute, what would he actually learn? What he's trying to tell us is that even though these colors are identical, provably identical, your brain is telling you that they are different. Right? Provably identical, your brain, for all you can believe, is telling you that they are different colors. Now, he goes forward and says, if you still don't believe it with this graphic...
different. It's exactly the same shade of grey. And if you still don't believe me, I'll bring the bar across and join them up.
Now your brain can see that they're the same color, because there's a bar joining them up. And your brain says, well, hell, maybe that bar's blocking the whole view of whatever I was trying to look at behind there, part of which is blocked by a shadow. So your brain knows what a shadow is. Your brain knows what light casting is. So is your brain lying to you? Are you now the subject of fuzzy, incorrect information? No, that is not the case. Your brain says to you, okay, 6.257 hertz light is coming from that square right there. Let me rewind it just a bit and get that gray bar out of the way. Now, I don't know what the actual light wavelength is. That probably doesn't even make any sense. But let's just define it, just for argument's sakes. That is 6.25 hertz of light wave. Your brain sees that, okay? And it doesn't interpret it. It just sees it, okay? Same with this square. Your brain says, that one is also reflecting at 6.25 hertz. Now, what would that mean? So your brain now takes all of its information that it's processed from real reality, from your real interactions with real reality. Your brain processes all of your memories and all of your experiences. It's an amazing machine you have in there. I'm not saying that it's not amazing. It is amazing, okay? It experiences all these things, it puts them together, and then when you see this, it comes back at you with a calculation. And it says to you, I am receiving the exact same wavelength from both of these squares. However, this square is in a shadow. Therefore, since they are giving me the exact same wavelength, and this one is in the shadow, Therefore, this one in the shadow must actually be a lighter shade. And your brain is correct. The scientists on this video, the guy who did the graphics, has used 6.25 Hertz for both squares. And your brain has correctly identified the fact that if they are actually giving the same wavelength to you right now, and one of them is covered by shadow, then they must actually be different objectively. Your brain knows that. Your brain knows that objectively those must therefore be a different shade. And it therefore presents them to you as a different shade, which is in fact the case in reality. If they were presented to you as an identical shade, one in the sun and one in a shadow, and they looked identical to you, then when you brought them both into the sun, they would obviously be different, wouldn't they? But because your brain is seeing them as identical when one is in a shadow, your brain says they cannot therefore be identical. They must be different shades. And your brain gives you, therefore, an objectively true interpretation of your senses. Why is that so confusing to these people? Now, have I made myself clear, ladies and gentlemen? If I have, then you owe me some Patreon money. I could be going and driving in BMW right now. I could be in some sort of Mercedes or something, and I'm here doing this, not getting paid, hoping eventually to get paid. I've been demonetized. I no longer get checks from Google. If this helped you, I can do more. More will be coming. Patronize me. Double your pledge. Call your friends. Message other objectivists. Say Cropper's back on and he needs our support. Okay? Patronize me. Let's get some of these people made fun of here.
Just with a grey coloured bar, and you can see there's no difference. It's exactly the same shade of grey.
Wrong.
If you still don't believe me, I'll bring the bar across and join them up. It's a single coloured block of grey. There's no difference at all. So this isn't any kind of magic trickery. It's the same shade of grey, but take it away again, and it looks different. So what's happening here is that the brain is using its prior expectations built deeply into the circuits of the visual cortex, that a cast shadow dims the appearance of the surface, so that we see B as lighter than it really is. Here's one more example, which shows just how quickly the brain can use new predictions to change what we consciously experience. Have a listen to this.
I think that is a really terrible idea.
Now, let's stop there for a second. He says, so we see B lighter than it really is. That isn't true, is it? We see B having an identical wavelength as the one that's in the light. And therefore, objectively, since it's in shadow right now and has an identical wavelength, it must actually be lighter. So our brain's not tricking us into that. We're not tricked into seeing it lighter than it is. It actually must be objectively lighter than the other one in order for them to cast the exact same wavelength under different circumstances. He's wrong about that last bit, isn't he? It's not true that our brain tricked us.
Sounded strange, right? Have a listen again and see if you can get anything.
I think that is a really terrible idea.
Still strange. Now listen to this.
I think Brexit is a really terrible idea.
Which I do. So you heard some words there, right? Now listen to the first sound again. I'm just going to replay it.
I think Brexit is a really terrible idea.
Yeah? So you can now hear words there. Once more for luck.
I think Brexit is a really terrible idea.
Okay, so what's going on here is the remarkable thing is the sensory information coming into the brain hasn't changed at all. All that's changed is your brain's best guess of the causes of that sensory information, and that changes what you consciously hear. Now, all this puts the brain basis of perception in a bit of a different light. Instead of perception depending largely on signals coming into the brain from the outside world, it depends as much, if not more, on perceptual predictions flowing in the opposite direction. We don't just passively perceive the world, we actively generate it. The world we experience comes as much, if not more, from the inside out as from the outside in. Let me give you one more example of perception as this active, constructive process. In this Here we've combined immersive virtual reality with image processing to simulate the effects of overly strong perceptual predictions on experience. In this panoramic video, we've transformed the world, which is in this case Sussex campus, into a psychedelic playground. We've processed the footage using an algorithm based on Google's Deep Dream to simulate the effects of overly strong perceptual predictions, in this case to see dogs. And you can see this is a very strange thing. When perceptual predictions are too strong, as they are here, the result looks very much like the kinds of hallucinations people might report in altered states, or perhaps even in psychosis. Now think about this for a minute. If hallucination is a kind of uncontrolled perception, then perception right here and right now is also a kind of hallucination.
So if hallucination is when your perceptions go crazy, then perception itself is a type of hallucination. Does that follow? Really? So we've just seen where our perception specifically would not allow us to hallucinate. They even went to the trouble of designing a computer graphic to cause us to hallucinate, and our senses and our brains still would not allow an hallucination. Our senses and our brains still saw through it and still said, even though those are the same color, they have to actually objectively be a different shade. They couldn't actually be the same color. Why has my video slowed down? What's happened? That's rather annoying. I was on a roll, goddammit. No, because we perceive, or let's see, what does he say? Because we can hallucinate about our perceptions, therefore perception itself is an hallucination, is proven wrong by the fact that he tried to make us hallucinate, and we still saw through it. Our eyeballs and our brains still was able to construct the true fact that those things must therefore be a different shade because one of them is in shadow. You can try to make us hallucinate, but we will still see the real thing. And then you're going to show me some sort of optical illusion where we where it tricks our eyes. Fine. But I've proven my point, and my video's slowed down and something goofy's happened. So I'm going to finish this. I'm only 8 minutes in. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to finish this in part 2.